Hello everyone, this is my next tutorial covering the UV mapping of the Vega interior. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover labeling a UV map. This isn't something I normally do, but I figured that so many other developers do it, I should show how it's done. So I'm going to use GIMP, same as I usually do for bitmap editing, and texturing generally, because this will eventually be a texture. So there's the layout that was exported from Blender. It has the alpha there because it's meant as an overlay. That's the theory behind it, but I always like putting it underneath whatever I'm working on, so the opposite approach. And that's a 1024 by 1024 pixel layout, and you'll see in a minute the problem with that. But in the meantime, I'm going to put in some labels. Present version of Blender gives you this black background when you get rid of the alpha. And that's one of the things I don't particularly like about the newer versions of Blender. That means that these labels have to be switched to white text from the default black. You can see there. I also am using a larger size than 18 points, but that's just because of the size of the layout file. And that's going to grow, actually, because I'm going to see that gear shift there immediately to the left of my cursor. That's not fully visible, so I need to double the resolution of the layout file. But in the meantime, I'm saving this XCF file with the labels, jumping way ahead here. And now I'm going to export a UV layout image in twice the normal resolution, so 2048 by 2048 pixels. And I'm going to get rid of all the opacity, or rather, I'm going to put in a rating of 1, which really means 0 opacity, really, with a transparent background. And you'll see what I'll do with that in a minute. So I'm making sure my settings are correct here. You can see how you can do a few different export options for this. So it sort of saved me here. So I save the file, and then I go back to GIMP. I change the size of the XCF file to double its original size, 2048 by 2048. And initially all those labels stay the same size, but as you'll see, I have to double their size too once I edit them to make them black again. Because I'm also going to fix this annoying problem with the alpha, where if I go with maximum alpha, I get a black background instead of a white background. That's another change, like I said, from earlier versions of Blender, which I don't like very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in white fill, because why not? There it is. So it's awfully close to the way Blender used to do UV map layout files. So I'm going to select all this, and I'm going to paste it into the lowest layer of the XCF file after deleting the original layout file. And now I have to change the color of all those labels and double the size, which is tedious, but there you go. This wouldn't always be necessary. Frequently, 1024 by 1024 pixels is perfectly adequate for a layout file size, but the problem with this interior is that it's detailed enough so that it doesn't really work. Too many of the vertices appear so small that you can't even see them. They just get erased entirely, and that's obviously not what you want. And as I said, I don't like the black background very much. The white background seems to be far less problematic. It's much easier to see the vertices and edges. Why? Well, because they're black. And the whole idea of using black edges and black vertices on a black background kind of escapes me. I think basically the answer is they want you to use it as an overlay and not as an underlay or background. The way I do it, I'm basically changing it because it doesn't fit my own work practices. This one is the only one that I have to rotate because I chose to align it vertically with the sides of the interior. I was fiddling with the controls a little bit there because text layers are very strange in GIMP. They basically behave differently from all the other layers. And if you notice, I added a layer for all these labels, but the text that I've added is not part of it yet. I'm going to actually have to merge these down later so that it's more orderly. Because as of the time I finished this, all of these labels were separate layers. Each of them was its own layer. Whenever you add a text anything in GIMP, it's added as its own layer, and you have to merge it into whatever layer you want later. Unless you're satisfied with just having text layers. I personally find that advantageous only if you want to edit them later. And I mean, you can retype stuff. It's not usually an absolute necessity to leave them editable. So here basically I'm switching them all to black color and doubling the size because the image file, the XCF file, is double size. Everything's now double size. And as I said, this is tedious. I mean, I'm at a disadvantage here in that I hardly ever do this. So I fell into this pitfall. In the future, I won't do it this way, obviously. And notice you have to get permission even to edit the text layers. They are editable, but you have to press that extra button saying, hey, I want to edit that. I mean, if you're trying to edit it, you want to edit it, right? It's another strange feature of GIMP. All right, so they're all pretty much black now, so I can put the opacity back to 100%. And there we have our UV map layout file with labels. And this will become the texture files. Each texture file, if I do more than one, will have different color upholstery. So the upholstery will be its own layer. The other stuff I'll keep at some default color. Like the dashboard will be black, and then fixtures will be whatever they're supposed to be. And everything will have its own layer. But of course, the first thing I'll have to do, after, as you can see, I'm cleaning up the locations of these labels, is that the labels will all have to go into their own layer to avoid confusion. Because once I'm finished with them, I don't need to edit them further. I can choose whether or not to include these in the final texture, and you can too, because if you notice, all of them fall outside of the UV map. So none of these will actually show up on the model. They're basically for the reference of the person doing the textures to navigate around the file. And as I said, normally I don't do this, but many people find this useful for remembering where everything is on their own texture files. I found that Microsoft Flight Simulator developers especially do this. There I'm realigning the background to make sure it aligns perfectly because for some reason it was slightly off. And that's pretty much it. There it is. There's the finished product, and at least until I do the textures. So thanks for watching.